70 miles southwest of London, and I'm homeless. And the person I blame most for this is Patrick Stewart. I was in London studying abroad as part of my undergraduate degree in theater, and I was paying £90 a week plus utilities to live in London, which means I was poor. But theater was ridiculously cheap. I was seeing probably 2 or 3 shows a week, and I heard that Patrick Stewart was going to be playing Macbeth in a production of Macbeth at the Chichester Theatre Festival in Chichester, England. And I thought to myself, the greatest writer in the English language and the greatest captain Star Trek has ever known, that was all I needed to hear. And so I went online and I bought my ticket. It was £8. And when I bought my train ticket, it was maybe £16. And only after that did I think to look at a train schedule. And I realized it was going to be difficult, if not nearly impossible, for me to catch the last train back to London. But I didn't care. I was 22. I wanted this to work out. Something was going to happen. So I get on the train and I'm going to Chichester and I arrive, and it's a really lovely little town. One of the oldest towns in England, founded by the Romans, and very little has probably changed. And so I get to the theater and I sit down, and the production is breathtaking. It's engaging and wonderful and everything I hoped it would be. And I'm going and I'm watching this wonderful production about a man's descent into madness, and right about the time where Macduff stabs Macbeth, it hits me. I'm going to miss the last train home. And so the production is wrapping down and my anxiety is only rising, and the show lets out, and I run to the train station and I throw open the doors, and of course, I missed the last train. I knew it. But it's about 9:30, the next train's about 6 a.m. So I think I'm going to just sit in the station, I've got a book, I'll be fine all night. I sit down, start to read. A couple minutes later, this ancient station master comes by. He's pushing his little broom, and he comes over to where I'm sitting, and he says, he's sorry, but for emergency purposes, he can't have me stay in the station. And I look at him, and I think, you're 90, and probably about 4'8". I'm 22 and 6 foot. I can't imagine an emergency in which you would be more help to me than I would be to you, but I don't want to argue, and so I walk outside, and I immediately see there's a gentleman talking to a cab driver, and they're, going at it. The gentleman looks at me, and I look at him, and we both realize we've done the same stupid thing. And so I walk over, and the three of us start to talk about what it's going to take to get us back to London. It turns out that £100 is what it's going to take to get us back to London. I maybe have a £5 note on me. I can't pull anything out of the ATM. I come back with empty hands, and we can't make a deal. The gentleman says he's sorry. He gets in the cab alone and takes it back to London. And so I'm stuck. And I'm walking around the town, and it's early enough that the bars are still open, and there's people out on the streets, and there's restaurants open. And I walk, and I find kind of a budget, conscientious motel. It's a chain, and I don't know how I would pay for a hotel room, but that's the thing to do. Seems conventional enough. And so I walk up to the front desk, where I'm greeted with a, "How can I help you, sir?" which is a very common sound in England. And I tell him my story, and unfortunately, he doesn't have a room. There's a convention in town. There's one room left to be had in all of Chichester. It's in a bed and breakfast. It's a family room, £400 per night. And so, what's more, out onto the street. And so I'm walking around, and at this time, restaurants are starting to close, and the streets are emptying, doors are being locked, and I'm the only person to witness the street lights coming on, and they're these horribly retrofitted Victorian street lamps that are pale and cast ghastly shadows. And I'm walking down these streets, and I'm seeing my breath at night, and I'm walking, and I come across a police station. And I don't see anybody in the police station, but I see there are lights on. I look through some parted curtains. There's a TV. They're probably watching EastEnders or something. And I walk to the front door, and there's a little yellow emergency phone. And I think, what a convenient place to have an emergency. And so I pick the phone up, and I'm connected, and I'm explaining my story. And please, would you take me in for the night? At which point I find out that the gentleman I'm speaking with is actually at a call center, which could have been in Brigadoon for all I know. And that people who miss their trains are police business. So he hangs up. And so I'm back out onto the streets now, and I'm walking around, and I don't know the last time I've seen a person, and I just want to sit down, but I immediately feel vulnerable. I can't see in every direction at once, and there's always, and this is not a cliche, there's always that ubiquitous bottle clanking and incoherent yelling that's happening in some narrow alley that's way too close for comfort. And so I'm walking, and for lack of anywhere better to go, I go back to the hotel. And the front desk clerk sees me walking in, and he tells me there's a snooker hall, just kind of fancier pool, that's a members-only club, but if I tell them my story, they might let me in for the night. And he tells me how to get there, and I muster all of my courage back up, and I walk back out onto the streets, and I find the snooker hall. It's on the 3rd floor of this building. And I open the stairwell, and it's this very claustrophobic stairwell. It's tight, and it's winding, and I get up to the top, and I am greeted with an industrial-strength door with a small rectangle of bulletproof glass and an intercom for a little buzzer system. And I'm looking at this door, and I tell myself, I don't know of the actual dangers, the dangers that might actually be out on the streets, but I had a pretty good idea of the types of dangers that might be beyond a door like that. And so I walk back up onto the streets, and all of a sudden I'm thinking about my mom and my dad and all of my friends and my flatmates and all of these people who love me, who have no recourse to come and save me, and who I will never see again. And so I'm walking, and it's cobblestone streets all through Chichester, and I'm walking, and like a cliche, I start to hear my own footsteps, and I stop, and I look around, and I walk a little bit more, and then I stop, and I look around. I had just seen Macbeth, okay? This is Shakespeare's bloodiest play. There are witches and ghosts. That's my mindset. And so it's probably about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I get back to the hotel, and I tell the guy, look, it's late, and I really just don't want to be out on the streets anymore. And he was a foreigner, and I think he knew what it felt like not to be at home there. And so he let me sit in the lobby. I couldn't fall asleep because he didn't like the way that would look. And I would have to leave in a couple hours at 5 a.m. when the early checkout started. And so he made me a pot of coffee, and I sat down all night, and I read, and 5 o'clock rolls around, and sure enough, his guests start to come out. And he looks at me, and I gather my things, and I look at him, and I try to give him the most sincere and grateful and humble nod possible. And I walk out into the street, and the sun had risen. And it was like an epiphany. I had not once thought the entire night that the sun was going to rise. I thought my stupidity doomed me to a perpetual night. And I'm walking through the streets of Chichester in this beautiful sunlight, and the shop owners are opening their doors and opening shutters and cleaning windows, and there's this tremendous feeling of I've made it. And I get to the train station, and I'm ready to get on that 6 o'clock train, and it's peak. I have an off-peak ticket, and not the balance. And so I find a little cafe, and I sit down, and I graciously wait for 3 hours. And I get on the 9 o'clock train, and I get home, and I find sleep. And I guess the one thing that's helped me, the one thing that I've learned through all of this, that's helped me in a lot of things that's happened to me since then, is that if you can just make it through that first night, most problems look a whole lot better in the daylight.